What is the historical timeline of the Geneva Conventions in IHL? Imagine a time when soldiers wounded on the battlefield had no guaranteed medical care or protection. This was the reality before the Geneva Conventions started shaping international law. The story begins in the mid-1800s with a Swiss businessman named Henry Dunant. After witnessing the suffering of wounded soldiers at the Battle of Solferino in Italy in 1859, he was deeply moved. He wrote a book called A Memory of Solferino in 1862, calling for organized relief efforts and protections for the wounded. His ideas sparked a movement that led to the creation of the International Committee of the Red Cross in 1863. In 1864, the first Geneva Convention was adopted. It was a major step forward because it set rules for protecting wounded soldiers and medical personnel on the battlefield. It recognized ambulances and hospitals as neutral zones and protected the medical staff working there. 12 countries signed this treaty, making it the first formal effort to create rules for humanitarian treatment during war. Over time, the Geneva Conventions expanded. In 1906, a revised version improved protections for the wounded and sick. Then in 1929, new rules were added for the treatment of prisoners of war, making sure they were treated humanely. These updates reflected the ongoing need to adapt and improve protections during conflicts. The biggest change came in 1949, after the devastation of World War II. The Geneva Conventions were completely revised and four separate treaties were created. The first protected wounded soldiers on land, the second covered those at sea, the third focused on prisoners of war, and the fourth protected civilians, especially in occupied territories. These treaties broadened protections and clarified rules for both international and internal conflicts. They also made it clear that individuals could be held accountable for violations. In 1977, two additional protocols were added. Protocol 1 expanded protections for civilians and combatants in international conflicts. Protocol 2 focused on non-international conflicts, like civil wars, giving civilians and fighters more legal safeguards. Since then, further treaties and protocols have been added. These address issues like protecting cultural sites and regulating weapons. The 1998 Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court reinforced the idea that individuals can be prosecuted for war crimes, including violations of the Geneva Conventions. Today, the Geneva Conventions form the core of international humanitarian law. They protect medical workers, civilians, and prisoners of war, and set clear rules for how conflicts should be conducted. Their development over more than 150 years shows a steady effort to make war less brutal and more humane.